Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Richie and I'm so glad that you're here. Get a drink, grab a snack, let's lock in and get into this video because we're just gonna be yapping about books throughout the whole video. I'm gonna be talking about the 26 books that I want to read in 2026. I actually don't even know what has happened here. Romance in it and there's grief involved. Literally sign me up. Usually in these videos a lot of people focus on the new releases they have in their mind for the year coming up, but I've decided to kind of have a few new releases, but a lot of my books are still just books that one are on my physical TBR, or two are books that came out in 2025 that I didn't get a chance to get into. I feel like that just kind of made sense for me. I feel like my reading taste has definitely evolved a lot since like start of 2025 to now, and so I have so many books that I feel like I missed out on and I really would love to get into, and plus they're on my physical TBR, so it just makes sense, right? Like tick them off the list. So that is the books that we're going to go through. Starting off with the new releases, I'm going to start off with the first book, which is by Sarah Adams, which I think actually came out at the very end of 2025, like the 30th of December or something, so it has already come out, but I'm going to include it. Essentially this one follows James and Madison. This one is like the last book in the When in Rome series, I believe, which is like such a good series, guys. If you're ever looking to get into romance, they all have a very cozy, cutesy vibe. They have a quirky town with quirky characters, which always makes for like very entertaining read, especially over the books, because you kind of get to know them, like their personalities as well. But I really enjoy the series, so if you're ever looking for like a good series to get into, good rom-com vibes, definitely get into this series. But anyway, In Your Dreams is about James and Madison. What we kind of know about Madison is that she left Rome to become someone in New York, like in the culinary world. She went to be a chef and do all of that, and then we have James, who is her brother's best friend, and he stayed back to work at his family's farm, I believe, and they basically, I can tell, have had some sort of like relationship. I feel like more so on James' side, I feel like in the books you can kind of pick up that he's always been like yearning for her, which we love a good yearner in this household, and that obviously just does it for me. I'm excited to see how like that will play out when she returns from New York. She gets some sort of opportunity, I think, to work with James. I'm not exactly sure. I'm trying not to read too much of the synopsis because I already know one big thing, which I guess it's on the back of the book, so it's not really a big thing. But I am surprised that this is like a love triangle situation, because apparently James's younger brother Tommy is also like vying for Madison's attention, pursuing her, and I'm just like curious how it's gonna play out, because I'm like, that's your brother who's like interested in the girl that you've been into forever. So I'm really curious how it's gonna play out and what's gonna happen, but that is that story, and I'm really excited. Like, I love a good like romance. The next book I have on my radar is an Alice Feeney book, and I've only ever read one Alice Feeney book, I believe, but I am like kind of getting back into thrillers, so I definitely want to pick this up because it just sounds really intriguing. It's called My Husband's Wife, and it's coming out on the 20th of Jan 2026. This one sounds crazy already just from like reading the synopsis. It follows this woman, Eden, who has gone on a run. She's coming back to the home that she's recently moved into. When she gets home, her key doesn't fit, and then the person who opens the door looks very similar to her, or like eerily similar, and that person is saying the stranger who opened the door is his wife. And now she's like, what the hell, because I'm your wife, all I did was go out on a run. And I'm just like, I don't know, that's already got me hooked. It literally says, one house, one husband, two women, someone is lying, tangled web of deception, obsession, and mystery that will keep you guessing until the last page. Sold me. I actually don't even know what has happened here. The other lady has, I think, inherited the house, but still, I don't know how, like, I don't understand. I don't know if there's like magical realism in this, but I'm really curious to see like how it plays out. The next book I have on my radar is called The Future Saints by Ashley Winstead. Now this also is coming out on 20th of Jan 2026. There's quite a few books that were coming out. I think I had 3 books that were coming out on that same day, but this one I'm really excited for. It's something to do with the music industry. It's got like romance in it and there's grief involved. Literally sign me up. Like my 3 favorite themes, and to put that all in a book, I'm like waiting. I'm so eager and so excited to read this. I'm gonna read off like the first part on Goodreads. What it says it's a beautiful, powerful, and transportive new novel about a music executive desperately trying to bring a rock band back from the brink. Literally sign me up. That just sounds so good. The band's manager dies, and then a new executive gets pushed through called Theo, bring them back from falling off, and I think some sort of like romance is played out, and then there's a grief of losing someone like their manager. It just sounds so good. Just like something about like reading things about the music industry, just like is just so intriguing to me because it's just obviously so far out of like what I do day to day. Like I work a corporate job, so like it just sounds so cool, and I'm just really excited for this one. The next book on my list is a bit different to what I usually read. It's called All the Little Houses by May Cobb, and this one also is coming out on the 20th of Jan 2026. I think this is the last book that I had on my radar on that release date. I feel like this book is like very much like if you want something juicy, scandalous, you want something that makes you feel like you're reading like all these like little towns of secrets. I feel like this book is like gonna be hitting the spot for that kind of mood if you're ever in it. It basically follows Nellie Anderson, the beautiful daughter of the Anderson family dynasty, has burst onto the scene. She always gets what she wants. What she can't get for herself, well, that's what her mother is for. Because Charlie Anderson, blonde, beautiful, and ruthlessly cunning, remembers all too well having to claw her way to the top. When she was coming of age on the poor side of East Texas, she was a loser, an outcast, humiliated, and shunned by the in crowd, whose approval she'd so desperately thirsted for. When a prairie-kissed family moves to town, all trad wife, woodworking dad, wholesome daughter wives, Charlie's entire self-made social empire threatens to crumble. Who will be left standing when the dust settles? I'm already invested. Like I already want to know what's happening. I feel like this is one of those stories, like I said, like if you want to know this town's like juicy secrets, I just feel like it just really is going to grip you, and just like you'll feel like you're revealing a secret on every page. And that's just like sometimes the kind of mood I'm in for, and so I feel like this is gonna be really good. There's a little section at the end of the Goodreads passage that says mean girls, mean moms, and the delicious secrets inside all of the little houses. I feel like it's gonna be such a good summer read if I can get it to it early enough. Going back to the romance, I've got a book by Cara Bastone that is on my new release TBR called No Matter What. Now I don't want to know too much about what this is about, but I know like the general synopsis is it's about a couple who is going through a traumatic incident, or like the aftermath of a traumatic incident, and they are just sort of not really seeing eye to eye, and I think they're basically living kind of separated. And then he joins her art group, or like her art classes, as like her muse. I've noticed that I really do enjoy a story about a couple kind of finding their way back to each other. I read Out of the Woods last year, and I really enjoyed that because I feel like it's a little bit different from like learning about a couple who've just met and they're like how they're, you know, learning each other and falling in love. And it's so different to when you're reading about a couple who have been together for so many years and they're just sort of trying to find their way back to each other because life gets busy, life gets messy, and like you go through a lot as a couple as you're growing together in different situations and experiences that you have. And so I really enjoy like a story about like a couple finding their way back to each other in terms of like that, you know, they're still together but they just have sort of drifted apart, if that makes sense. So I don't know, I really enjoy that, and I really enjoyed Out of the Woods, so I feel like this one will be definitely right up my alley. I love Cara Bastone's writing. I Promised Me Sunshine last year, and that was a top book for me. It is one of the main books that I recommend to people. I have like 3 or 4 books that I go to recommend to anyone that I meet because I just love that book so much. Promise Me Sunshine is definitely one of the like most special books that I hold very close to my heart. So I'm very excited to read another book by her. Actually on my 2026 TBR, which I guess I'll just kind of mention now as well, is Ready or Not by her, which is an accidental pregnancy trope. I don't know too much about it. Again, all I know is like that's the trope in that one, but I've heard wonderful things, and I feel like the fact that you can take an accidental pregnancy trope and have it like well loved by many feat in and of itself, because I feel like that trope is usually, you know, it's not really anyone's favorite, and it's like a very hard trope to do right. So regardless of the trope, I feel like I'm gonna really enjoy that. So that's actually also on my 2026 like books that I want to read. The next new release I have is by Carly Fortune, which is called Our Perfect Storm. This one comes out in May 2026. I feel like I've had a mixed relationship with Carly Fortune because I hated Every Summer After, and then One Golden Summer I did enjoy. Like I really loved the way that she's able to pull you into your destination. Like I feel like that is just so unparalleled, especially for like just a summer like location. She fully pulls you in. The way she like described like the lake setting, I was just like envisioning myself there so vividly, and so I really enjoyed that aspect. Although I didn't love the romance, I did love like Charlie's relationship with Nan and all of that. Like I did love elements of it, but I think the actual romance fell flat for me. But then towards the end of last year I read The Summer Will Be Different, and I really enjoyed that one. Once again, the setting, she just eats with the way she describes her setting. Like I just find it like so incomparable to anyone else, because I just feel so like vividly immersed into the story when she's talking about her setting and like describing everything. But anyway, besides that, I really enjoyed that story. I really loved the relationship they had, and also I really enjoyed just like learning about Lucy. And so now I'm just kind of like, I think I do like Carly Fortune. I think the first book, just because of the trope in it, if you know you know, I just couldn't really get into it, and I think after that I was a little bit like iffy, but after reading The Summer Will Be Different, I really like want to continue reading her work and see how she goes, because I feel like this next book is going to be really interesting. It follows Frankie and George, who are childhood best friends. Frankie is getting married, and on the day of her wedding her fiance dumps her, and then she goes back to her hometown and George is like, let's go on your honeymoon together, and they go off on their honeymoon. Obviously there's like some sort of unresolved maybe feelings there. They're like best friends since childhood, but I'm sure there's like been other feelings at play here, and so I'm just really curious about that one. The next book that I want to talk about is a book by Sarah DeMoff, and this is called The Burning Side. This is her new release in 2026. It's coming out June 16th, which is like right around my birthday, so I'm very excited because that will be the perfect birthday gift to myself. I have not read The Bright Years, guys. I still have it. That's actually on my 2026 list as well, which I will get into in a little bit, but I really have heard wonderful things about her debut novel, The Bright Years. I've just always wanted to read. I've been wanting to read it for so long, but it's been so hard to get in Australia. I don't know if it's just me, and so I finally was able to get it towards the end of the year when there was like Black Friday sales, but I could not for the life of me figure out where I could order it or get it that wasn't costing me an arm and a leg. So that's kind of why I've had to like wait for so long to read it, because it's just been, yeah, so hard to get. Anyway, besides the point, I'm really excited to read The Bright Years. This one, however, is kind of similar. I think she writes a lot of family drama. This one follows a couple, April and Leo, who are on the brink of collapse. When their house goes up in flames, family secrets and thorny histories emerge as they are forced to decide what is worth salvaging. I don't even want to read the rest of the synopsis because I feel like that already has got me hooked. Again, like I said, I love a couple who are kind of like trying to find their way back to each other. I'm not sure if that's going to happen in this story, but yeah, just kind of like knowing like secrets that emerge, especially from a house fire, and like I'm just like very curious about it. I don't really have anything else to say apart from like I'm very excited to read Sarah DeMoff's writing and get into her work. I feel like she has been one of the debut authors that people have been raving about non-stop, so I'm very excited to join them. And yeah, I hope I really enjoy both of these books, but yeah, both of her books are on my TBR for 2026. Another new release that I have my eye on is called Now Back to You by BK Borison. I read First Time Caller at the end of like 2025, and unfortunately I didn't really enjoy it. I love the concept of it because it's like, you know, they meet on like a radio show program, which is so cool. I know it's based off the movie Sleepless in Seattle, I believe that's a movie, but I really enjoy the concept of it. But I felt like the MMC was just like not good. Like he was kind of annoying, a little bit whiny, and I didn't really enjoy him. I really didn't understand why him and Delilah even kind of stayed together. I felt like they just were on very different levels, and I just feel like their communication just wasn't there. I don't know. I really didn't enjoy that book, like the romance of it, but like the setting, the actual like way they met, the meet cute. I really liked the side characters more than I liked the main characters, which is like never really happened to me. I feel like I usually like have some redeemable qualities of like, you know, the main two characters, but I just really enjoyed the side characters more. But in the new one, Now Back to You, it follows Aiden's best friend Jackson and another weather forecasting person called Delilah. I'm really excited for their story. I thought he was so funny and charming and goofy, and I am kind of like excited to see how that goes, because I think as a MMC he was already like way better in the first book than the actual MMC, so I'm very excited to read about like his story. I think they're both covering like a big storm, and so they have to work together, and while they're working together like feelings erupt and all of that. That one is going to be probably my favorite in the series, or however it goes, but like I feel like that one's gonna be my favorite because yeah, First Time Caller unfortunately just didn't do it to me. But yeah, I've heard good things about people who've read arcs for that, so I have high expectations actually. So that is another book that is on my new release list. Next one is the last new release I have on my radar for 2026 at this stage. I don't know if any other books will be announced that I'll be like really into, but this is the last book that I have on my radar, and it's called Every Version of You by Natalie Messier. I'm not too sure how to say her last name, but I heard the top of like the little Goodreads blurb literally said, for fans of The 7 Year Slip and The Love of My Afterlife, and I was like, okay, I'm sold, because one, I love The 7 Year Slip. Love of My Afterlife is such a good quirky read, and I feel like this one is gonna be kind of similar in that sense. It follows Joey, who is a lawyer. She's like really making it in her professional life, but in her personal life she's just kind of not really got much of a social life and all of that. So she not exactly what she envisioned for herself when she was younger, and so she goes to this dinner with her best friend, and something happens at the dinner, and then she wakes up being able to kind of relive her life from college onwards, and she still has all the memories of all the decisions that she's made like in her previous life. And I don't know, I think the concept of that is really interesting because she's gonna try and make different choices that lead her to be with the best friend, but it seems like there might be someone else who's actually more suited for her that she kind of starts to notice a little bit more. Just like love a good romance, I don't know, something about magical realism in romance stories always gets to me, and especially I feel like this is more about Joey kind of finding herself and finding out what really matters, because like I said, although she has really like made it in her professional life, she's really not where she thought she would be in her personal life, and that probably comes back to the choices that she's made when she was younger and things like that. So I'm just really curious. I love books like that, and I really am excited to see how this goes, especially if it's similar to Love of My Afterlife. I really enjoyed that. That one was so funny and such a good read. I have high hopes that this is gonna kind of like live up to similar vibes to that, so I'm very excited for this. Now I'm going to be talking about the books that I have on my physical TBR. Starting off with The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. Now I read a Kristen Hanna book last year. I did, right? I read The Nightingale, which is one of my top books. I have always recommended that to anyone, whoever listens to me really. It's like the most beautiful story ever, and it was the first sort of book to get me into Kristen Hanna, and I have not read a Kristen Hanna book since. I feel like I was also a little bit scared for a little bit because I know her books can be emotionally devastating, and so I think I gave myself ample time, and I do want to continue reading her books. I have this one by her which is called The Great Alone, and I've heard wonderful things about this one. It follows a family in 1974 who move to Alaska, and it kind of just like follows their life in Alaska, where they live in a very remote part of Alaska where not a lot is happening. They do have like a small community there that welcomes them, but again they are living in Alaska where it's very cold and it's very dark. But they are living in Alaska, and as the winter sets in, it gets very cold and very dark, and I think the father who has moved them, he has just come back from war as well, and so he is just emotionally not there. And I think there is some trigger warnings with this one that you might want to check out if you're interested in reading this one. I'm really excited to read this one. I've just like heard such wonderful things about this story and just about Kristen Hanna's books in general, so I want to continue reading like her backlist as well. So yeah, the next book I have is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Now this is a sci-fi, which is again kind of actually out of my comfort zone because I don't really read sci-fi. I don't think I've ever read a sci-fi book in my life. Maybe when I was in high school, I don't know, but this is a sci-fi novel essentially kind of asking the question, are you happy in your life? And there is just so many elements to this. I actually just finished reading this recently, so I don't want to say too much because I'm scared I'm going to give away the plot in any way, shape or form, but it's basically this man trying to find his way back to his wife and his kid and doing whatever is possible, going through so many different lives, and it just is like a story about the multiverse. I really want to say more, but again, I'm really scared I'm going to spoil it. So this is already like ticked off my 2026 TBR, but such a good read. I highly recommend. The next book I have is a little bit different. It's like another, I think, mystery vibe, and it's called Matchmaking for Psychopaths. I kind of added this to this 26 books to read in 2026 list because it was on my TBR, so I don't really mind if I don't necessarily get into it, but I feel like I probably will get to it this year anyway. This is a mystery, and it follows Alexandra, who basically becomes a matchmaker for psychopaths. I'm really curious about that in and of itself because I'm like, what kind of job like gets you to matchmake psychopaths? I'm wondering if it's kind of giving Butcher and Blackbird vibes, where it's like the serial killer vibe and she's just like kind of matchmaking serial killers. I don't know, I'm just really curious about that. She ends up getting a new client who wants to date her and another one that wants to become her best friend, but again, because she's matchmaking psychopaths, I have to assume that both of those people are psychopaths and then they want to be her friend, and it's very crazy. She ends up with a human heart on her doorstep. So I'm just really curious. I'm like, how the hell did we get to, you know, a human heart on your doorstep? So that's another book on my list. The next book on my list is a huge chunky monster that I have heard wonderful things about, and as you can see, it is The Will of the Many. I think it's a high fantasy if I'm not mistaken. Just a big chunker really. I don't really feel like I have to get into it too much. It just says, at the elite Katanen Academy, a young fugitive uncovers layered mysteries and world-changing secrets in this new fantasy series. Again, I've heard just wonderful things about this. I don't really read fantasy anymore, but I think it's because I'm just like not really into romantasy. Like there was a period in my life that I was really into it when I first started reading, but I just don't think fantasy or like romantasy is really for me. I think in some cases I might be into it, but I think I prefer maybe just like a fantasy. But anyway, I've heard wonderful things, and the new book in the series also just came out, so I am keen to read this is all I can say. It's so thick, I'm just getting scared looking at it. Regardless, I've never read a fantasy like this before, and so I'm really excited to see how I'll find it, and I have a feeling I'm going to enjoy it, but it's probably going to feel like a new language that I'm learning. The next book I have is a book that I mentioned just before, and it is The Bright Years by Sarah DeMoff. Now, I really want to read this one. This is like priority TBR for me. I want to read this as soon as possible. It follows Ryan and Lillian Bright, who are deeply in love, recently married, and are now parents to a baby girl, Georgette. But Lillian has a son she hasn't told Ryan about, and Ryan has an alcohol addiction he hasn't told Lillian about. So Georgette comes of age watching their marriage rise and fall. When a shocking blow scatters their fragile trio, Georgette tries to distance herself from reminders of her parents. Years later, Lillian's son comes searching for his birth family, so Georgette must return to her roots, unearth her family's history, and decide whether she can open up to love for them or herself while there's still time. I love that synopsis already. I really want to like get into this and just like sink my teeth into this story about this family and the rise and fall of the marriage and the child, and then obviously the son that they've given up as well. It has 3 point of views, which I think will be very interesting, and it's not that long. I feel like I could read this in one sitting. I feel like it's like under 300 pages. It's crazy because how can you fit so much like depth and emotion into like less than 300 pages? Like, do you know what I mean? I'm just really in awe of this book, and so I'm really excited to read it. As you can, I feel like I'm raving about this book like I've read it already, so I hope it lives up to this hype that I have created for myself. So that's another one on my list. The next book I have is one that I'm also very excited for, and that is Wild Dark Shore. This one I've heard just incredible things about. Like I said, 2025 has just had some wonderful releases. This one follows Dom McSalt and his 3 children, who are caretakers of Shearwater, a tiny island not far from Antarctica, home to the world's largest seed bank. Shearwater was once full of researchers, but with sea levels rising, the salts are now its final inhabitants, until during the worst storm the island has ever seen, a woman mysteriously washes ashore. I feel like I don't want to read any more. I don't want to give anything else away to myself. I'm so curious because obviously like no one would really trust each other, and especially if a random woman washes ashore when you've been like sort of isolated from the world for so long. How are you meant to trust who this woman is, and how is she meant to trust who these people are? I know I said I don't want a romantasy anymore, or like I'm not very into romantasy anymore, but I lied because I have kind of a romantasy. It is The Night and the Moth. Now, I think this is pretty much a romantasy, but I feel like with Rachel Gillig's writing, her fantasy and her fantastical world is so much more than just like the average fantasy world. And if you have ever been on booktube or book talk, you probably heard this book so many times, but I'm very excited to read this. I read One Dark Window, but I never continued the series. I'm not exactly sure why. I think I have a thing with series. I just don't finish them, unfortunately. I'm just not a series finisher, but I've heard just great things about this one, and so I wasn't actually interested in getting this book at the start of like when all the hype happened. The more I saw people talking about this book and the things that they were talking about, I thought it actually sounded quite interesting, and so I wanted to give it a go for myself. This one follows Sybil Durling, who has spent 9 years dreaming of having no dreams at all. She's a diviner. In her dreams, she receives visions from 6 unearthly figures known as omens. From them, she can predict terrible things before they occur, and lords and common folk alike travel across the kingdom of Trom's windswept moors to learn their futures by her dream. Just as she and her sister diviners near the end of their service, a mysterious knight arrives at the cathedral. Rude, heretical, and devilishly handsome, the knight Roderick has no respect for Sybil's visions. But when Sybil's fellow diviners begin to vanish one by one, she has no choice but to seek his help in finding them, for the world outside the cathedral's cloister is wrought with peril. Only the gods have the answers she is seeking, and as much as she'd rather avoid Roderick's dark eyes and sharp tongue, only a heretic can defeat a god. So, I saw someone say Robert Pattinson as Roderick, but with like charcoal under his eyes, and I was just like, you know what? I think I've got to read this book now, because that just sounded like the perfect description to describe someone, and I feel like I've seen some fan art as well for this book, and it just looks so good. The next book I have is called The Names by Florence Knapp. Now this one is, again, has some trigger warnings. It follows essentially the story of how like your name can define you and shape you as a person, I believe. It is 1987, and in the aftermath of a great storm, Cora sets out with her 9-year-old daughter to register the birth of her son. Her husband intends for her to follow a long-standing family tradition and call the baby after him, but when faced with the decision, Cora hesitates. Going against his wishes is a risk that will have consequences, but is it right for her child to inherit his name from generations of domineering men? The choice she makes in this moment will shape the course of their lives. Incredible. That already sounds incredible to me. I feel like it's gonna be emotionally devastating, so I have to like pick my time and read this right, but I'm really curious about like how a name can change who you are, or like kind of person that you end up becoming, and I think it's just such an interesting concept. The next book I have is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now I have like read I think one book by Taylor Jenkins Reid once in my life before, and I just did not think I was much of a fan of Taylor Jenkins Reid before, and I think it's because I just wasn't in the right like time of my life to read her work. I've just heard wonderful things about this story and about the romance in this, and just like how the story like evolves and stuff. I've seen people sobbing to this book. If you know me, you know I love a good book to cry to, so I'm really excited to read this. I feel like I've just been putting it off because I'm just like scared of like how I'm gonna find it. As Taylor Jenkins Reid is like one of those authors that she somehow writes about such interesting career paths or professions and is able to just get you hooked into them. I've never read, like I said, any other book by her. Like for example, Carrie Soto's Back is about being like a tennis player and like the journey you have to go on to be a tennis player, like the work, the strength, the endurance, like the training, and like what it means to be like the best of the best in your like field and stuff. So I don't know, I think she's very, very talented in being able to write about different professions. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how this one goes, because it's more about like being an astronaut and what that entails, especially back in 1984. The last book I have on my physical TBR is My Friends by Frederick Buckman. He's one of my favorite authors and I have not read this yet, which maybe sounds like a fake fan, but I just haven't had a chance to sink my teeth into this book, and I'm so excited to read this. I think this will probably be my next read because I've just had wonderful things, and it's Frederick Buckman. Like I don't have to say anything else. If I've ever recommended a book to you, again, Frederick Buckman is up there, is one of my favorite authors to recommend to people. And so yeah, the fact that I'm like sitting here still saying that I haven't read this book just makes me feel like such a fake fan, but I promise this will be a book that I'm reading in 2026, and hopefully I'm reading it soon. So this is the last book that's on my physical TBR that is on my radar for 2026, but I've got a few more that are like kind of on my mental TBR. Now we're going to be moving on to books that are on my mental TBR. With the Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. I think that's how you say her name, but this one is, I kind of don't know what this one is about. All I know is that it follows a group of friends and it kind of goes through the different eras in their life, and I really love a book where you're traveling through different eras in life of like a few characters or one character, and just seeing like how their friendship and relationship just like evolves and grows as they become different people and different experiences. I feel like that's like a very common theme of like kind of what I really enjoy in stories these days, and so I'm really excited for this one. I've heard wonderful things about it and I feel like I'm just gonna really enjoy it. The little synopsis that I got was that it's an era-defining novel about 5 black women over the course of their 20-year friendship as they move through the dizzying and sometimes precarious period between young adulthood and midlife. And I don't know, that just sounds so good to me. And the next book I have is again one of the books that I have seen people rave about non-stop, and I feel like it's well deserved. It sounds like such a wonderful, emotionally devastating, that seems like to be my 2 words today, emotionally devastating but very heavy book, and it is Broken Country. This one follows Beth and her gentle, kind husband Frank, who are happily married, but their relationship relies on the past staying buried. But when Beth's brother-in-law shoots a dog going after their sheep, Beth doesn't realize that the gunshot will alter the course of their lives, for the dog belonged to none other than Gabriel Wolfe, the man Beth loved as a teenager, the man who broke her heart years ago. Gabriel has returned to the village with his young son, Lear, a boy who reminds Beth very much of her own son who died in a tragic accident. As Beth is pulled back into Gabriel's life, tensions around the village rise and dangerous secrets and jealousies from the past resurface, this time with deadly consequences. There's nothing else I can say apart from the fact that I'm really excited to read this book, because I just feel like it's going to, one, emotionally devastate me, and also I feel like Claire Leslie Hall is going to become a new favorite author, just like Sarah DeMoff. Like I feel like her and Sarah DeMoff are like kind of in the same category in my mind, so I'm very excited to read both of their books and maybe even their backlist if I enjoy like their work and stuff. I think Sarah DeMoff is a debut author, but you know what I mean for Claire. So anyway, I'm very excited for that. So that is another book on my list. The next book I have is a book that came out towards the end of 2025, and it's called The Best Worst Thing by Lauren Oakey. Now, I don't know too much about it. I know that it follows the FMC, and she thought she had it all, and she was kind of going through some infertility, and then it turns out that her husband was cheating on her. So it's sort of like really big revelations, or like really big things that are going on in her life, obviously going through infertility and then finding out like while you're going through such a hard thing like that your husband was cheating on you. And I think a romance blossoms like elsewhere, like outside of this, that she meets someone. I've heard just like really great things about it being such a wonderful, like mature love story, and so I really want to read that. I think, like I said, I love romances with like a lot of depth and emotion into them, and I think this one definitely just the topics of being infertility and cheating and kind of like navigating what your life was meant to look like and what actually happened. I'm very curious for this one, and I'm very excited to read it. So that's another book on my list. And then I have Remarkably Right Creatures, which is one of the books that I feel like a lot of people tend to recommend. It's one of those books that people are like always recommended. It's like their top book to recommend to other people, and I've heard just like wonderful things about it, and I'm really excited to read it. I actually loaned it out to a friend of mine recently, and so I'm really excited to hear her thoughts on it and see how she found it. But it basically follows Tova, who is like a cleaner in an aquarium, and she has lost, I think, her husband, and her son has gone missing quite a few years ago I believe, and there is an octopus in the aquarium who like has perceptions, and he thinks of humans, and he's counting down the days until he's like either not in captivity or he's passing away, something like that. Like he's counting down the days that he's in captivity, and it's just an interesting story. I don't really know much more than that, and I think that's like all I need to kind of go into the story, because I'm really curious about how like this octopus is going to help this woman figure out where her son has gone missing or what happened to him, and I'm really excited to read it. So that's really all I can say, and I'm excited to see what my friend thinks about it as well. And yeah, I'm curious about this octopus. I've read a little bit of it, and then I for some reason put it down, and I remember thinking like the octopus was just so funny, just like his perceptions of humans, especially like humans that he's seeing day to day, like being at the aquarium. And yeah, I don't know, it sounds really good. The next book I have on my mental TBR is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. Now this one is also a debut novel, and it sounds incredible. From being a debut novel, like the concept of the story is that like everything, like there's no chapters or anything, everything is like through different correspondences and like emails, mails, and like letters and things like that. And I just think that is such a cool concept. And what do you mean you can build a whole story and understand characters and actually understand the main character Sybil herself through letters? Like I think that's so cool. I don't feel like I need to say anything more, but basically there's just like obviously some things that get unearthed during this process, where Sybil just sits down and is like writing letters to all these different people in her life, to everyone she can write letters to essentially, it seems. And so I don't know, just something about that concept has already got me. I feel like it is such an interesting concept. Like who is writing stories, or who is like setting up a story like based on letters, and like the entire thing is just like letters and emails and other correspondences. I just think that's really cool. I feel like I don't have to say anything else to get you guys wanting to read this book as well, because I think it's just such a cool concept. And then the last book that I have on my mental TBR for 2026 is The Mad Wife. Now this one is a little bit different. I think if you love the movie Don't Worry Darling with Harry Styles and Florence Pugh, that's like a similar concept or like similar vibe of this book called The Mad Wife. Again, this is a little bit different to what I usually read, but I'm trying to branch out and read different types of books as well. And so this one really caught my eye. They called it hysteria, she called it survival. Lulu Mayfield has spent the last 5 years molding herself into the perfect 1950s housewife. Despite the tragic memories that haunt her and the weight of exhausting expectations, she keeps her husband happy, her household running, and her gelatin salads the talk of the neighborhood. But after she gives birth to her second child, Lulu's carefully crafted life begins to unravel. When a new neighbor, Bitsy, moves in, Lulu suspects that something darker lurks behind the woman's constant smile. As her fixation on Bitsy deepens, Lulu is drawn into a web of unsettling truths that threaten to expose the cracks in her own life. The more she uncovers about Bitsy, the more she questions everything she thought she knew, and soon others begin questioning her sanity. But is Lulu truly losing her mind, or is she on the verge of discovering a reality too terrifying to accept? I really enjoyed Don't Worry Darling when the movie came out, and so I am really curious about this one, and I think it's gonna like really give the same vibes. And again, it's very different for me. I don't really read this kind of genre usually. I don't really know what genre it really is, but it sounds really good. I'm really excited to read it. So that's the last book that I have on the books that I want to read in 2026 list. I am so excited about all of these books, and especially like the new releases, but also just books that I have, because that means I can just pick out the book and read it as soon as possible. And I'm really excited to have like a wonderful reading year this year. I feel like I said before, but I'll say it again, I really feel like I know what I like to read now, and so I feel like I'm really gravitating towards different types of books nowadays. It's great to see all these wonderful books coming out, all these debut authors coming out with such wonderful pieces of work, and I'm so excited to read all of them. And I feel like there's never enough time to read all the books that you want in the world, but I'm gonna try this year. That's my goal. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Some books to add to your own TBR this year. And yeah, anyway, I love you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.